Nearly 40 years later, Roots is hard to forget. The short miniseries had their first episode released on January 23rd, 1977, and their last episode on the 30th of July in the same year. It all started with the book Roots, the saga of an American family by author Alex Haley. The book spent months on the bestseller list and was translated all around the world, and Haley won the National Book Award. However, the book was just the beginning. More than 28 million viewers tuned in to see the airing of the first episode of Roots, the story of Kunta Kinte, and his capture and his horrific journey to the United States. The character Kunta Kinte was discovered to be the great-great-great-great-grandfather of the author Alex Haley. Haley found out about it by doing a naturalistic research and traveled to many parts of the world to find out the story behind some of his ancestors.
The villagers sensed what had happened, and the women formed a circle around me, chanting and dancing, passing their babies to me one after another. It was almost too emotional a moment to handle. I was participating in one of the oldest ceremonies of humankind, the laying on of hands. What they were saying to me through this act of pressing their flesh to mine was, we are you and you are us.
Kunta Kinte was one of the 1.5 million Africans from the Senegambian region who had been swept up in the transatlantic slave trade. His research also helped reveal that the language of African Mandingo people was Mandinka. Because of Haley's in-depth research, many people came to find their ancestors from the past. The multi-dollar genealogy industry may not have existed without Roots or may have been discovered later. People inspired by Haley traced their bloodlines as well as went to libraries for the research and backgrounds of their people. Across the country, the increase of visitors of libraries across the world in every race set a record of visitors for that time. Roots brought all races together, and the series became an eye-opener for the people all around and across the country. Although the book may have similar topics and storyline, it's different from when you read it. Seeing Kunta Kinte endure every whiplash, to see the way he felt when the people he loved were taken away from him and the growth of his family, the miniseries helped to bring a little more perspective than the book did. Not only that, but Roots changed the way Americans looked at themselves. It created a conversation between the country, and sometimes that is what our country needs. However, there was also some controversy with the series and book.
Someday, we're gonna be free.
Haley got criticized and many questioned his historical mythology, and book sales decreased. Also, ABC Network was afraid that the predominantly white audience would stray away from the violence and slavery in Haley's book. So, the network scheduled the series to air on consecutive nights instead of weekly installments, hoping to minimize their financial risk in case of audiences turning away or if anyone refused to watch it. There were very low expectations for the upcoming series, so they casted high-profile actors and beefed up versions of characters in the book. Some of these high-profile actors include LeVar Burton, O.J. Simpson, John Amos, and Maya Angelou. Some of the stars only make a quick promo for the show, but it was only because they wanted the predominantly white television audience to see a familiar face. However, there were many new African-American actors in the show of the series, and it showed the talent of black actors in the entertainment industry. It was rare to find a TV show with an all-black cast, and again, with that show breaking viewing records. Despite this, there are many positive things that came from Haley's production that just started the change, equality, and acceptance of what was going on in our country. The nation's first collegiate African American Studies program had been created at San Francisco State University, and many other universities followed. after the television broadcast, more than 250 colleges and universities began offering courses on roots and history of slavery. Roots also inspired a baby naming boom with an increase in newborns receiving ethnic and African-inspired names, showing a more diverse and acceptance in identity. After asking a few questions about the series to my grandparents, I got a very interesting response. When I asked them whether they watched the premiere of the show, they recalled watching it and mentioned how the movie provided details regarding Black history that wasn't illustrated or broadcasted during this time, and drew enormous interest. They also mentioned how they saw people taking pride in the strength it took for our ancestors to endure such a humane hardship. My grandfather mentioned how it positively reinforced the need to continue advocating for human equality and civil rights, and generated several conversations with family and friends. He continued by saying, "My inner friends were mostly supportive and shared their experiences and thoughts. I was able to share and gain perspective from other cultures. Due to my diverse group of friends from middle school to high school, I was more aware and protective of how other cultures perceived or prejudged me, and worked hard to demonstrate and exemplify my character and worth ethic." Negatives were when African Americans, Caucasians, and others would dismiss movies' relevance and say that was over 100 years ago as if it didn't matter. Also, not everyone wanted to be reminded of personal experiences and emotions generated from watching Roots. My grandmother added how she saw where some people felt shamed for their ancestors' actions, some claiming and calming their outward dislike and attitude toward the African American community because they were faced with the truth. I think that when more people become informed about these horrific events, they begin to think and understand that adversity that African Americans went through as a whole. A lesson that could be learned is that you never know how it feels to be in the situation until you've been in it. As someone who has watched the series when I was younger, I felt like my eyes were opened wider about the subject of slavery and seeing how people were treated and how they helped me understand their situation more. If the series had a positive effect on someone as young as me at that age, then it would surely produce the same effect as to others easily as well. Roots still has an effect on the world 30 to 40 years later. And that is shown because in 2011, an island in Gambia was renamed to Kunta Kinte, and a statue was put up in remembrance of him. In 2016, the History Channel created a remake of the original miniseries. The show received 96% on Rotten Tomatoes and 4.7 million tuned in. The ratings may not have been the same as it was in 1977, but the effect is just the same.